I'm Franchesa Santos. I am a PhD student here at CIIS. I have a lot to say, so I'm very excited to explore this opportunity with you and possibilities, which is essentially the focus of my research here at CIIS, the possibilities of the future pertaining specifically to the future of work. So this is just a paper that I've written in conjunction with the work that I've done already that I just wanted to share and just give you guys an opportunity to mull it over and kind of explore possibilities for yourself. In his eloquently futuristic book, Queer in Utopia by Jose Munoz, he couches queer theory in utopian idealism, undermining our tentative grasp on queerness as something not yet realizing, asserting queerness is an ideality. Put another way, we are not yet queer, we may never touch queerness, but we can feel it as the warm illumination of a horizon imbued with potentiality. Situating queerness beyond the here and now as something belonging to the future, we encounter a pathway of potentiality in which we compose what could be rather than acquiesce to what currently is. Drawn from Munoz's utopian idealism, I contend a similar theorization on labor, one in which the status of work, workers' rights, and our very understanding of what it means to labor is propelled by a futuristic reimagining. In this way, we queer the future of work, guided by possibilities and budding potential. Queerness, though not yet realized, is already within our reality, and not radically discontinuous with the present. The potentiality for a queer future of work remains simultaneously within our grasp, yet always on the horizon. To access a queer futurity of work, we may need to squint, to strain our vision, and forced to see it otherwise, beyond the limited vistas of the here and now. Work in relation to the labor rights movement is in a state of probability, in which structural change that revolutionizes work is always on the brink of manifestation. In other words, queer frameworks allow us to unbridle potential from the impassivity of fear and complacency, frame the collective imagination, ultimately allowing us to negotiate change, to transform relationships, to dream different dreams. In order to queer our conception of work, we embrace the idea that utopia is on the horizon, waiting to be realized. But in exploring utopia, we do so with the full acceptance of failure. To embrace utopia is not to embrace perfection. It is to embrace an educated hope. Comprised of potential imaginaries, the concrete utopia is energized by a hopefulness that welcomes disappointment. Working in unity, both hope and disappointment operate within a dialectical tension. That hope that further opens a gateway for post-work futurity. Hope that is inclusive of failure, disappointment, and all other potential impasses rob them of their disabling effects, cultivating a resilient hopefulness, both educated in concrete modalities and immune to disenchantment. In other words, this reconstruction of work is not led by an aimless hope, or on critical optimism that would leave us intentionless. Rather, to queer work and reimagine its future is to do so in a state of anticipation of a paradigm waiting to be realized. An issue of tamed desire, stifled imagination, and complacency, the labor movement continues to enforce the narrative of work as one based on settling for minimums and adequacy. Adequately paid, adequately safe, adequately happy, or I should at least say barely paid, barely happy, barely safe. By occupying our dreams, we confine our reality and by extension shape the parameters of rebellion. What could be a revolution is neutered into reform. Relinquishing control to what Mark Fisher terms capitalist realism, in which belief itself is a threat. In this way, what was reform and disbelief in the context of labor organizing are synonymous. Incapable of believing in the potential of utopia, we instead believe in the incapability to effect transformative change, ultimately bargaining for adequacy. Far from progressive, the current labor movement's reformist underpinnings are an entirely liberal enterprise that yields to the limits of the law. In his book, Normal Life, Dean Spade critically examines the same reformist strategies frequently championed by mainstream LGBTQ movements, arguing that fixating on achieving recognition through legal reform impedes the potential for a broader critique, stating narrowing political resistance strategies to seeking inclusion in anti-discrimination law makes the mistaken assumption that gaining recognition and inclusion in this way will equalize our life chances and allow us to compete in the assumed fair system. Nevertheless, the reform rubric espoused by nonprofit organizations and liberal activists alike package the idea of LGBTQ rights within the confines of anti-discrimination bills and crime laws. Despite the significance placed on securing rights by reforming our legal system, violence and discrimination still persist for groups whose struggles have supposedly been addressed. Labor union enthusiasts engaging in the same reformist methodologies hastily bargain away their militancy, only to be undermined later. Employers learn to enact exploitation or coded oppression in new ways, circumventing the laws meant to empower united workers. Lockouts, forced arbitration, and shutting down company operations altogether to dissolve union activity are common practices favored by employers who respond to legal union organizing with equally protected retaliatory methods. Capitalism, or ultimately legal reform, remains a tool of passivity for the sole survival of capitalism, succinctly illustrated by labor historian George Feldman in his new discussion of the late President Theodore Roosevelt. He explains how Roosevelt's great achievement was that he helped preserve the basic integrity and legitimacy of American capitalism by his willingness to transform it, as he once put it, making major changes that avoided a threat to the system itself. In analyzing the limits of labor reform, it becomes clear that this practice is powerless by design. Through internal oppression, unambitious dreams, and stifled hope, our current labor politics have peaked at immobility. What we need, what our labor activism needs, is a critical labor politics that perpetually questions its own effectiveness and refuses to take for granted the stories of what counts as change, what actually maintains certain structures and categories. We need a critical labor politic that is about practice and process, rather than arrival at a single point of liberation. However it's sold, wage work and the reformist measures that perpetuate its legitimacy have become a naturalized institution, an unquestionable practice, a given. To survive in this society, you have to sell something. It's precisely this naturalization that situates work outside the realm of potential debate. As Kathy Weeks argues in her book, The Problem with Work, the social role of waged work has become so naturalized as to seem necessary and inevitable, something that might be tinkered with but never escaped. To make work at once public and political is then a way to counter the forces of naturalization and privatization. By questioning both work ethic and work-centered society, Weeks illustrates how we can repoliticize, refuse, and ultimately reimagine a life without waged work. Work as we know it has been co-opted. Whether we work at jobs we hate to enjoy our personal passions off the clock, or exploit our interests for the sake of a paycheck, it's our passions that now fall prey to alienation. The revolution of work should aim to reclaim the body, the soul, and the passions we experience through either that inform identity and then speak to the foundations of our humanity. A staple voice within the dialogue of alienated passion, the French utopian socialist Charles Fourier makes the case that the human race is liberated when passion is liberated, warning that alienating passion is damaging to social harmony, and to attain happiness we must reframe labor around unadulterated pursuit of individual passions. The future of work is through pursuing unapologetically passionate work. Speaking utopically, passionate work is free from all the coercion of capitalism. It is the happy agreement between necessary labor and leisure, in which both are equally prized without capital value. Passionate work is work that indulges pleasure, encourages a variety of practices, and prioritizes autonomy. Exploitation, alienation, and competition that undermine global cooperation have no place in this future. Instead, this world deprivatizes social services and goods while reforming the very notion of wealth, the only concept of wealth but the only perception of being rich. Pleasure through possession will be a vestige of the past, replaced by the understanding of wealth through enjoyment, a state of existence between revolutionary humanism and responsible automation. Reflecting on this potentially transformative future, it's my belief that the question of what kind of city we want cannot be divorced from the kind of people that we want to be, to quote David Harden. Only after an all-encompassing transformation, we will see the potential of utopia that is passionate work. Utopia remains on the horizon. Through releasing work from the tyranny of time, suffering, and capital, we open a doorway into the future, where post-work manifests passionate work, and humanity itself is reimagined. For 30 years, we've lived under the guise of TINA, Margaret Thatcher's famous slogan in reference to capitalism and free market economies, there is no alternative. To that, I say, there is always an alternative. The question is, are we brave enough to dream it, to pursue it against all odds.